everyone, I'm here today to share with you guys sort of my tips and tricks and things that I have learned going from having one kid to having two. I was getting a lot of requests from you guys to sit down and sort of share my thoughts and my just honest opinions on what it's been like over the last year, because Luke just turned 1, if you can believe that. So I want to share with you guys sort of what it was like going through that transition period and how I prepped Julia for having a sibling and things I would do differently and all that fun stuff. And hopefully you guys find this helpful. If you do, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos every single Saturday. And without further ado, let's get into this. So first I want to start out with some tips and tricks and things that I learned and did to help prep my firstborn child for the arrival of my secondborn child. So Julia was 2 for the majority of the time that I was pregnant with my son Luke, just to kind of give it some context. And so the first thing I want to share with you guys is to prep them but not overwhelm them. I think that's really important because they're learning so much at this particular stage, assuming sort of, you know, like everyone has number 2 at a different time, but like assuming in the 2 to 3 range, you know, to start having number 2, you don't want to really overwhelm them. They're learning so much at such a rapid pace, and it was really important to me because Julia is a much more serious child. I didn't want to, you know, overwhelm her with too much information all at once. So I just sort of prepped her with the things that I felt were necessary, things that, you know, a couple of key facts and things that she'll appreciate and she can kind of go over in her head a couple of times. And then from there I can just bring up more information as it happens and as I feel it's necessary to address. The other thing we did is we went through a lot of different books. So not just books that are like, hey, I'm a big sister and this is what it's like having a younger sibling, but also just kind of going through some of her favorite books and pointing out the interactions between the siblings. So it's not necessarily like the little critter books. I don't know if you guys read those ones to your little ones, but the little critter ones, there's little critter and little sister. And the story may not necessarily be about their relationship in any way, shape, or form, but you know, in the picture, you can kind of see how they're interacting and maybe how little critter is helping little sister, you know, put on her snow boots, and you know, that's something that older siblings can help with, or you know, just things like that to help her see the context and see, oh, that's sort of a little bit of a piece of the puzzle to what I can expect having a newborn around. We also read some specific stories that relate to having a new baby in the family and what to expect, from Berenstain Bears to, I think there's some books by a woman named Joanna, I think. I don't know. I'll put the links to the books that I thought were really good in the info bar below for you guys in case you're interested. But that was really important and something that we kind of, you know, incorporated into our daily routine to help prep Julia. Another thing I found helpful was really tapping into their imagination. At this stage, Julia loves to act out different scenarios and things that are going on with like her princesses or her dolls, her bears, things like that. So we got her this little doll, which we called Baby Emma. That was actually a present from my mom for her. And we helped her to understand sort of some of the things that you do with a newborn baby. So before Luke actually arrived, we would sit down and I would show her how I put a diaper on Baby Emma, and she could bring me the new diaper so she understood, okay, this is something that I can do when Luke arrives too. And just, again, just helping her with the preparations, making her feel like she's a part of this new addition to the family and she's not being replaced. Now on to when baby number 2 actually does arrive. So there is, first of all, like this massive period of time where it's chaotic. Like I'm sure you guys went through it too with the arrival of number 1. There's always going to be that transition period, whether you're getting married and you have to live with another person or you're adding another member to your family in some way. It's always good. There's always going to be a period of adjustment. So it's the same thing with adding number 2 to the mix. Only this time, you know, I was a little bit more cognizant of making sure that Julia was well taken care of and wasn't feeling ignored in any way. So some of the things I did is I reached out and bombarded my family and was like, please come over. Having Julia have some one-on-one time with her aunties and uncles or her grandparents, it just helped her to feel special. So while Chris and I got some time to readjust and get to know this new little human in our lives, Julia was having fun and playing with new toys and playing with her aunties and uncles and everyone, all of her family and friends, and just allowing her to kind of get used to the new member as well. We also picked out a new toy for Julia for when Luke arrived, and we also brought her along so she could help pick out a toy for Luke when he arrived, and that was something that she could give to him as sort of a welcoming present. Again, just getting her involved and making her feel like this is something we're all doing together and not something that's just sort of like, hey, you're getting a sibling, good luck with that. One thing that Julia and I really enjoyed was finding ways while I was sort of adjusting to Luke and Luke's schedule and things like that, was finding things that Julia could do to help me out so she still felt engaged with me, that we were still hanging out together and things like that. So she would help me pick out which onesie to put Luke in. She would hold the fresh diaper for me while I changed his diaper. She would read stories with me while I was nursing Luke. That was really important, especially at the beginning, because she's very much a mummy's girl, and I wanted to make sure that she still felt included. She wasn't being disregarded for this new being, but she still understood that this new being needed a lot of mummy's attention, and it was really important for us to make sure that this baby is happy and healthy, and what things she could do to really help me to make sure he was content. But outside of that, for moments where, you know, I was putting Luke down for a nap or something like that, and I needed her to kind of play quietly, but she really wanted to be, you know, with either Chris or I, you know, she would help out Chris with dinner, or they would play with Play-Doh together, or they'd have like special activities or things that they would do together to kind of make her feel like she's still a really important member of the family. But just overall, it's finding just the little things either with you or with, you know, your family members or something, just to really help them feel special and a part of this whole new, you know, transition. Another thing going through the transition is that Julia really liked to know where I was going and what I was doing. She didn't like to be out of the loop. I don't know if that's true for all kids, because really I just have Luke and Julia as my only experience with being a mother. But for Julia, she asked a lot of questions. Where was I going? How long was I gonna be? What we're gonna do when we get back? All that kind of stuff. So, you know, before, if I had some time to sort of prep her in advance of like going to nurse Luke and she had, you know, family members over or Chris was home or something like that, she could sit down and I could say, okay, so right now I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna nurse Luke. I'm gonna nurse him for, you know, 20 minutes or something like that. And then when we come down, do you wanna pick out a story that we'll read when I come downstairs? And that just helped her to understand, okay, so mommy's gonna go upstairs, she's gonna go on for a little bit of time, not really understanding what the time period is, but some period of time. And then when she comes back down, this is what we're gonna do together. And that just helped her to feel better about knowing, okay, mommy is coming back. That was really important. Or I would bring her along and she could ask questions about what I was doing, how I was changing Luke's diaper, how I was getting him out of the crib, how I was bouncing him or burping him or anything like that. She really wanted to be part of that learning process with me. And lastly, as I said before, there is going to be a period of time where there's this transition chaos where you're adjusting to figuring out what this new baby needs, but you also can't ignore your firstborn. There's gonna be some point in this transition where both of them are gonna be crying, they're both gonna be cranky in some way, and they both want mommy at the same time. And you know what? You just have to take a deep breath. It happens to all of us. We're all going through it, and it's a period that is going to phase out over time. Just continue to do what you can do. This is, again, transition period. So this is not, oh my gosh, well, this is what it's like having 2 kids. That's it, never doing this again. There is going to be a point where it starts to peter off as number 2 gets a little bit older and can have more interactions with the first one. They can play together a little bit more, things like that. But oh my gosh, guys, it's so worth it. Having that newborn experience with your older one, it's so cool. And knowing that you're bringing this gift of having a sibling to your older one is incredible. I'm an older sister. My younger sister, she just had a baby girl in November, and it's so cool seeing her as a mom and us growing our relationship, and I'm so glad that I have a sibling. So it's nice being able to do that for my daughter, and even though sometimes it's chaotic and crazy, it is totally 100% worth it. So now I want to share with you guys some things that I learned from the whole process through the transition phase, up through the last year or so, and some things, you know, maybe that I would have done differently. So one thing is I would have emphasized the specialness of the role of being a big sister to Julia without putting too much pressure on her to sort of perform this new role as an older sister. I think, you know, going back, I would have been less like, these are the cool things that you get to do, and it's very overwhelming for a 3-year-old. And I would have more just made it like, great, you get to be a big sister, this is really exciting, and sort of brought up the special role that it is as sort of a mentor and a role model as Luke got older. It wasn't so much necessary to kind of prep her in advance for all of that and expect her to internalize it and know what to do with all that information. So I wish I had sort of, I don't know, kept it a little bit lighter from the beginning and sort of brought up more information as needed as we went along. Another thing I learned is to not feel guilty about having to sort of like loosen some of the house rules that you may have in your home. So for example, Julia watched a couple of more episodes of Dora than I would have normally liked her to watch, or she had more snacks as I tried to adjust to getting Luke to sit in his swing and stay still. Just things like that. It's inevitable. It's going to happen as you're trying to adjust to having this second child and sort of figuring out their personality and what they're like, and, you know, your relationship with as sort of like a family unit. That's okay. Like, you're gonna have to be a little bit more flexible with things here and there. And once you get a handle on things and you sort of figure out what the dynamic is within the new family, you can go back to tightening up the reins where you need to, but in that period, like, don't feel guilty about doing those little extra things to make the process a little easier for yourself. Next step is to focus on the quality of time that you're spending with your firstborn versus the quantity, because quantity is obviously going to be limited as you have number 2 in your life now. So for me, it was putting away my phone entirely and not having it anywhere near me, to focus entirely on the maybe 15-20 minutes that I got to like just spend with Julia on X, Y, and Z, and we would play Play-Doh, or we would read her favorite story, or we would dance around to Cinderella, or just something where I'm focused entirely on her and we can spend some one-on-one time together, and that just made her feel really special. Another thing that I learned is, regardless of how much preparation goes into, you know, making sure your kids understand their new role as an older sibling, they're always going to act in some way, shape, or form to the transition. Kids like stability. So they may act out negatively, they may take on the role and be like super stoked about it, they might be really jealous. Make sure that when they do act out in that sort of transition period, to help them to understand what it is that they're actually acting out against. So if they start throwing things at a wall, it's probably because they're frustrated because baby is crying, or they're not getting attention from you, or in some way, shape, or form. So some of the things that I did with Julia is sitting down and saying, I think you're feeling frustrated. Are you feeling frustrated? And she'd be like, yes. Feeling frustrated, mommy. And then we would talk out like, we know that throwing things at a wall isn't a good way to act out if we're frustrated. What's something we can do when we're frustrated? We can stomp our feet. So we would practice stomping our feet like an elephant or something like that, and helping her to understand, okay, the reason that you're feeling this way is because X, and putting a label on what that feeling is also helps her to, you know, whenever she's feeling frustrated, she can actually put a word on it, and it's like, I know what this feeling means, and this is what I can do to help myself until mommy can come back to help me with X, Y, and Z, or play with me, or whatever it is. We also tried to like refocus her anger or jealousy or anything like that when she had those mood swings, and do things like big family hugs, just moments where she gets to spend time like with Luke, she gets to hold Luke, she needs to be near Luke, so that she grows this bond with this new baby the same way that Chris and I would be forming a bond with the baby. She needs to form a bond with him too. And so making sure that she's, you know, with him a lot was also really important. So I think I really learned to cut Julia a little bit of slack in that period, and just help her to understand what she was feeling and help her to get to know her new baby brother. And lastly, kids really like stability. So while I couldn't say every day or on a moment's notice like, hey, we're gonna go to the park today, I could say to her the exact same thing every single time she woke up in the morning, or the same thing when she went to bed at night, or we could read the same story before bed, or say the same prayers at bedtime, or whatever it was, just to keep some consistency in her schedule so she feels some sense of normalcy throughout the period of the day. I think just having those little pockets of routine for Julia really helped her during that transition phase, and helped her to feel like she had some stability still in her life. And that's everything for this video. Give it a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos every single Saturday. Or if you're looking for more beauty, makeup, fashion fashion, hair kind of content, go and check out my Rach Loves channel. I put up new videos there every Tuesday and Thursday. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful, wonderful week so far. Leave me a comment below and let me know what new videos you guys want to see in the future. And I hope you guys are all having an amazing, amazing weekend. I will see you guys all in my next video. Love you girls. Mwah.